Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive.
Mm.
I think you're going to find this one pretty interesting. It's got a lot of layers to it. And we're going to be looking into a potential controversy surrounding the son of Israel's attorney general,
Oh, wow.
Gali Baharav Miara.
Okay.
And there are questions swirling about theft and military connections and whether things were kind of smoothed over in a way that's raising eyebrows.
Yeah, I mean, it really does make you think about when those personal actions kind of intersect with legal processes and how that plays out in the public eye. You know, this isn't just about like a missing piece of equipment or something.
Right.
It's about how we perceive fairness and accountability when you're talking about people, you know, in positions of power.
Right. So let's just jump right in and unpack this whole thing. The story begins during the recent war in Israel. So just imagine you're a reservist. You've flown back from abroad to serve your country.
Right.
You've got this ceramic vest. It's essential gear worth like $2,700. You've got your ammunition. You've got personal items. And you get to your unit and everything's gone.
Oh, wow.
Just like that.
That's got to be unsettling.
Yeah. And then it takes an even more unusual turn because security footage comes into play. And guess who's seen taking the vest?
Okay.
The attorney general's son, who also happens to be a reservist officer in the same unit.
Oh, wow.
So now, if this were any other soldier, wouldn't you expect like a straightforward investigation?
Right.
Military police, you know, standard procedures, the whole 9 yards?
Absolutely.
But that's not quite what happened.
So what happened?
Well, the soldier whose vest went missing claims that the attorney general's son at first denied taking it, but then he got in touch with him to discuss replacing the vest.
Okay. So right away, you have to wonder if there was some attempt to like handle this quietly outside of the, you know, typical channels.
Right.
I mean, offering a replacement is one thing, but does that really address the potential like breach of military regulations?
Exactly. And it's important to note that this soldier, even though he was offered a new vest, he wasn't satisfied with how the situation was being handled. It seems like this whole approach left him really disillusioned to the point that he actually left the unit.
Wow.
So instead of a formal military trial, we have a senior lawyer named Nir Shemari who steps in to kind of resolve the situation. And here's where those connections that we were talking about earlier start to come into play, because guess what? Shemari is also the unit's commander.
Oh, so it's starting to feel like we're moving away from any sort of standard procedures.
Yeah. And to make things even more complicated, Shemari brings in another high-powered lawyer, Yosef Benkel, who has some interesting connections of his own.
Like what?
We're talking connections to Qatar's charity fund and the Israeli negotiation team for hostage retrieval.
Yeah. Okay.
This isn't just some average lawyer. This is someone who knows how to get things done.
He knows people.
Yeah. And what's really striking is what Benkel allegedly told the soldier. He said, quote, "I'm here to finish the matter as nicely as possible," end quote. Emphasizing his connection to Shemari and his ability to reach the right people in the family.
So now it's not only a potential cover-up, but there's like hints of influence peddling, maybe even some veiled threats.
Right.
Like that I know people carries a lot of weight in a situation like this.
Absolutely. And it gets even more complex when you consider that both Shemari and Benkel work for this prestigious law firm, Shibboleth.
Okay.
And why is that relevant?
Well, I'm assuming it's because they're connected to the attorney general somehow.
Well, they've publicly supported the attorney general in her conflicts with the current government.
Ah, so you start to see this whole web of relationships.
Right. And it raises some serious questions about conflicts of interest at every level.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Why wasn't there a formal investigation by the military police? Was there an attempt to protect the attorney general's son because of his family connections? These are questions that demand answers if you really want to uphold the principle of equality before the law, you know?
Yeah, it's a big deal.
It is a big deal.
Yeah.
And you know what? This isn't just about one incident. It really feeds into a much larger conversation about public trust in the legal system. If it seems like, you know, those in positions of power or those connected to them are operating under a different set of rules, it can really undermine faith in the whole system.
You know, it's interesting you say that because this case has definitely become like a talking point in Israeli politics.
Right.
Some right-wing figures are pointing to this as further evidence of bias within the legal system.
And it's important to consider those perspectives. Even if you know they're coming from a place of strong political conviction, whether or not the accusations of bias are accurate, the fact that they're being raised highlights a broader issue of eroding trust in these institutions.
And, you know, I can see how this story would resonate with people beyond just the political sphere. I mean, if I had something stolen from me while I was serving in the military, I would expect there to be a clear process, a fair investigation.
Of course.
The idea that someone might be able to bypass all of that because of who they're related to just doesn't sit right.
Absolutely. This case touches on like a fundamental sense of fairness. People want to believe that the system works the same way for everyone,
Yeah.
regardless of their background or connections.
But when something like this happens, it just reinforces that cynicism that a lot of people already feel towards those in positions of authority.
Right.
It makes you wonder what else is going on that we don't know about.
Well, that's the thing. It's crucial to remember that we haven't heard the Attorney General's side of the story directly.
Right.
And while her office has dismissed these claims as, falsehoods, there's a clear need for greater transparency if they really want to address public concerns.
Yeah, silence just fuels speculation.
Absolutely.
The longer this goes unanswered, the more it looks like an attempt to avoid accountability.
And what's also interesting is the military's response.
Yeah, what have I said?
Well, they said that the Attorney General's son was transferred to a different role within the unit.
Yeah.
But they haven't adequately addressed the allegations of theft.
Right.
Or the involvement of these high-profile lawyers.
It almost feels like they're trying to downplay the seriousness of the situation.
Yeah.
I mean, stealing military equipment, especially during wartime, that's not a minor offense.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
And that raises the question, was there any pressure from higher up to handle this case differently
Right.
than they would if it involved someone without, these powerful connections?
It feels like this incident has really opened up a can of worms.
Yeah.
We're talking about potential legal and ethical violations, questions about abuse of power, and the erosion of public trust in both the military and the legal system.
It's a stark reminder that justice needs to be seen to be done. It's not enough for institutions to simply assert that they're impartial.
Right.
They need to demonstrate it through their actions,
Right.
particularly when you're dealing with cases involving those in positions of authority.
So what does all of this mean for the average person? What are the key takeaways here?
Well, this incident has sparked a national conversation in Israel about accountability and transparency and potential conflicts of interest within powerful institutions. It's forcing people to confront these uncomfortable questions about whether everyone is truly equal before the law.
And it underscores the importance of a free and independent press that can shed light on these kinds of situations and hold those in power accountable.
Absolutely.
You, the listener, are now armed with knowledge about this complex and troubling case.
Right.
What are your thoughts? What resonates with you? What questions does this raise for you about the interplay of power, influence, and justice in your own society?
It's a lot to think about.
Yeah, it really is a lot. It's easy to kind of think of this as just like an isolated incident, something specific to Israel. But the reality is these questions about power dynamics and, potential conflicts of interest,
Right.
they resonate everywhere.
Yeah, they're universal.
Every society has its own versions of, elites and connected individuals.
Exactly. It makes you wonder how many times things like this happen that we don't even hear about.
Right?
You know how often are situations kind of resolved, quote unquote, behind closed doors because someone knows the right people
Right.
or has enough money to make a problem disappear?
Yeah, it's almost like a chilling thought, isn't it?
It is.
Like how much is going on beneath the surface
Right.
that we're totally oblivious to.
Exactly. And it's a reminder that, transparency and accountability are so crucial.
Right.
Sunlight is the best disinfectant. When things are brought into the open, when there's scrutiny, it's harder for these kinds of situations to just fester.
Absolutely. And, we have to acknowledge the courage of the soldier who came forward in this case.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he could have just accepted the replacement vest and moved on.
Right.
But he felt strongly enough about this to speak out, even though he knew there could be consequences.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It takes real courage to stand up and say, this isn't right.
Yeah.
His actions are a testament to the power of individual voices.
Yeah.
To challenge injustice, even when it feels really daunting.
Yeah.
By refusing to be silenced, he's contributed to a much larger conversation
Right.
about accountability and the need for a fair and equitable legal system.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm going to leave you with a final thought.
Okay.
We've unpacked a lot of complex issues here: potential abuse of power, questions of influence, the importance of transparency.
Right.
And it all started with this seemingly simple incident, a missing vest.
A missing vest.
What I'm wondering is this: if you were in a position to influence or change the system, what steps would you take to ensure that justice is truly blind? That it applies equally to everyone, regardless of their status or connection?
That's a powerful question, and one that each of us should consider, because the pursuit of a more just and equitable society requires vigilance.
Yeah.
It requires action. And sometimes it starts with asking those difficult questions.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep the conversation going.